Hello, gang. Let me know if my audio is coming through. And dust on my pop screen. A2C, hola. ¿Qué tal? Hi, Demej. Can you guys hear me all right? Great. All right. So, as promised, we're doing something a little bit different today. We are going to be working on some VG keys for an animated project. I can't go into too much detail about the project itself, but I mean, we can cover a lot of stuff. Essentially, I've got some sketches for what the keys might be. I'm going to probably go through one or two of them. Not today, we'll see. Because really the challenge today is to do some variants on style. So that's gonna take up a fair amount of time. I'll be on probably the full day, so we'll see how I'm feeling. I might have to bow out, you know, breakfast and dog and all of that. But that's what breaks are for. So I picked this one to start. It's medium complex. There's several different ones here to choose from. I was probably going to do this one, but this is a better sort of setting shot. The other wider ones, they would be good too, but because of the distance and level of detail, I don't know that they would be good for showcasing style. So this is kind of a middle of the road. It's got complexity, it's got some distance so that we can account for how those things would be dealt with. And that's kind of the challenge here. So we're thinking about how colors should behave in this level of realism, which there shouldn't be too much. It's got a fairly animated feel to it, especially with the figures, and kind of that level of detail. How I'm going to handle my edges. The client had talked about some hyper realism in the background, but I talked them back from that just because of the complexity in terms of production, getting background painters to do that kind of stuff. So what we're going to do today is just to try some middle of the road things and see where we land, and hopefully come up with 2 or 3 options for the client. So that is the plan. I'm here, I'm working, so I'll be focused, but lean in, chat, ask questions anytime they come up, and let's get started. So with the traditional animation painting for background, they do something called scumbling, which is to get that gradient in the background really quickly. Traditionally, it would be, with acrylics, you'd pick out a few different colors, your sky field and your ground field, and you would just kind of, not scumble, badgering, thank you. You would use a really big, flat, soft brush. You'd lay down your colors, and while it's still wet, keep wetting it, smooth everything out, so that the gradient is very, very smooth. But we're working digitally, so we can do whatever we want. I will probably start with a gradient layer. If I can find it. I work on a much bigger screen normally. It's like it's super widescreen format screen with a slight curve to it. But you wouldn't be able to see everything on the stream. Let's start with something relatively simple, maybe 3 colors. Or take a look at my reference. With this up, this is cool. When you have photos kind of near what you're after for the location, you can just color pick directly from. We're gonna do that now. See how it works. This is our lightest light, our darkest dark, or representing that on the gradient map. Something a little bit darker. Okay. Good start. This portion of the story is set in kind of like an Ireland type area, so we want to get the color feel, a little bit of the in this case it's a dramatic scene, so a little bit of dreariness to it I think would work with maybe a bit of sunlight poking through, and that will give us maybe we could have sunlight hitting some parts of the buildings and maybe a little bit here in the prayer labyrinth. Go ahead and set this to multiply. Knock the opacity way back since we're going to just treat that as the root sketch. Now we can really see how this gradient is going to work here. I think let's probably do a little bit more saturation at this point. How are y'all doing today? School, work? What's good in the land of internet? Do back to front as usual. Touch a green to this. Nope. Saturated. Excuse me, it's evening there, 8:30 p.m. So you're just chilling, following the Twitter shitstorm. Oh my god, I, it's morning here, so I just got up a little while ago, and I didn't get to read too much into it, but hot damn, it is impressive how quickly that man shit the bed. A couple of bits of rough again. Kind of digging something in here. Let's take this one out. Gonna work on the sky for a minute, which means we're gonna get another layer, put it behind the mountain hillscape we just added. When you're working in animation backgrounds or like a environment piece for games, the thing to always remember is that it is a stage, and what you want to be painting is things that will draw attention to the areas of action. So we've got figures here in the midground and in the distance. That means points of contrast, color, things like that. That's where you want those things to pop. And when you've done it right, because there aren't going to be characters in the background when you've finished it, it should feel like there's something missing right there. And that's when you know you've done it right. That's with traditional style anyway. Okay. Probably do something kind of along the lines of what we've got here. I might add like little islands and things like that for other points of interest. Go Trek, welcome. Glad you could join today. Morning. Let's do a quick... The edges, of course, will change. We don't want the edges to be so smooth. But we're just making a selection for this layer. And when you're doing this kind of thing, remembering that, you know, you're creating these contours. Each shape you make should be visually satisfying somehow. You don't want to shirk. You want to be composing even at this stage. Even though I'm just lassoing right now, I'm thinking about overlap. Like, how can I make sure that this section feels like it's in front of that? You want everything to work together. We're going to imply atmosphere. Great. You want that to work alongside your details. It's animated, so I don't want to make everything really crisp in terms of angles. I want to like get a little bit of jauntiness going on. Oops. Sometimes you deflect, that happens. The thing with that kind of stylization, adding a little bit of jaunt or some, I don't know, posture to your background shapes is you want to add enough to make it feel, to get that animated feel, at least in the style I'm working in right now, or I'm working towards. But you don't want it to be so much that it actually detracts from the scene. Little hedgerow. Two shapes the same size, we don't like that. What am I working on today? Today we are doing a little bit of live freelance. I have been trying to do this for ages, trying to get clients to be okay with me showing how actual finished professional work is done, like the full process. But it's really tough, you know. Of course, there's NDAs and things like that. But this is a smaller budget greenlight pitch, and they were really cool about it. I've worked with these guys a lot before on a bunch of other stuff. So they're great. This will probably be covered by tree, but you never know which parts of the trees you're going to cut out. So it's always a good idea to kind of just paint through. I'm purposefully not including these trees or that other island in this layer, because I'll just put it behind. Again, just getting jaunty with my shapes. Let's do this, copy all, paste. And what this is going to do is preserve my edges. I could have made a mask, but I like clipping masks just as much. but it does mean we need to bring our sketch up on top. Lock the pixels on that. The actual work sometimes seems like a black box from the outside. Exactly. I think that can kind of intimidate when it shouldn't. Like this stuff, it's basically what you're doing, and for yourself and for classes and things like that. It's the same kind of stuff. It just has this feeling of extra pressure when it shouldn't. So I want to try and take the gauze off that a little bit. What kind of details can I share about the project? It is a animated series. This is a greenlight pitch. So there's different phases of development when we're talking about an animated show, a game, a movie. What you have is the initial phase where you've got a script, you've got people attached. Like that's a super important part of it, is getting the right people attached. So like a director, showrunner, things like that. In this case, we have the producer. We have 2 producers, showrunner, and 2 artists. So it's really bare bones right now. But the goal at this stage isn't to make the final product. The goal at this stage is to sell it to investors that would be like, hey, this is cool. You're doing something here that's fresh or whatever, and we want to throw money at it to make this product. So that's the greenlight pitch. You want to get more talent involved, you want to get more money people involved, more suits, and that's the name of the game at this stage. So that's what we're doing here. In terms of the project itself, it is kind of a can't get into it too deep. It's a little bit of a medieval fantasy touch of horror type thing. It has, obviously with a church there, it has a bit of a spiritual religious bend, so that's cool. What else could I get into? It's based off of an existing property. You'll never guess. Don't even bother. This is this company's model. Radiant. They make they find IPs that exist, usually in book form or in comics, things like that. They'll find something that's great, but it's not on everybody's radar because we're inundated with media. So that's their system. I think it works pretty well. It's clever. Grab a dark mid. We're just gonna block in some color here, and what this is gonna do is give us some composition to start. So each of these in the line work, with animation, you have to think about economy. If you have the budget for it, if you have the artist for it, you can go like Akira or Ghibli and do some really crazy, intense backgrounds. But you have to account for that, which means different levels of detail, different types of design. And that's why you see so many varied things. Like we just started watching the Boys animated series, Diabolical, and it's a very like old school style. So that animation background look is really simple. It's almost clip art-y, and that it's got your shapes, and then you got a gradient, and that's it. And then you've got real, like hyper real painting like Akira on the other end. This is going to be somewhere in the middle, more closer towards not quite Wile E. Coyote, but that realm. So if there's that gamut, this is going to go the way. But anyway, so when you have something simplified like this, you got to pay attention to these potentials for overlapping layers, and you can do things like hinting at that greater depth, so you can get a feeling of a lot of depth with a minimal amount of actual painting. I think I'm gonna. One of the goals that I wanted to do, or I wanted to try, because again, we're just doing sketches for the client to peruse and decide on a style. One of the things I wanted to try was like having simple structures, simple lighting gradients, but have it be a little bit brushy. So that ties into what we've been doing lately on the channel for painting. Do I have references, examples for the art style? No. I should have gotten those up, but I do not have them. I have stuff in mind, and this is how I work a lot. It's, you know, I get the assignment and I just start cracking. Um, it's one of those things where I've just had a lot of experience seeing these different things, so my visual vocabulary is pretty well rounded there. Um, but I should have some stuff up. I am lazy, and I just wanted to get started. Grab a light side, pick one. I think potentially we could do something like that. With this overcast day, there's not really strong light and dark sides to things, so it's in some ways it's almost arbitrary. We're just experimenting at this stage, so no worries. I'm being mindful of the values that I'm allowing myself at this level of detail, remembering that I'm going to have a broader spectrum in my focal points. These characters may be black line, black outline. I don't know just yet. I was involved in the character design for a couple of the greenlight characters, but all of that is subject to change, and I am not the artist that's going to be doing any of the animation for the greenlight. What's a good detail is the stonework goes up. I'm laying down my base values right now, but I'll probably go in later and start doing little color pops and accents to get that painterly feel going. This kind of thing. There. Good. A little bit. This is going to be too green, but starting it out. What we can do to mitigate this difference in saturation, we can go back to our previous one, kind of introduce the same color, but very lightly scumble it in. You're getting something in between. Not too worried about these edges right now. I'm really just kind of doing a fill-in. Meant to be a stone wall. Off just a touch. It may be that this is just the top edge of the thing, as I'm thinking this might be a good spot for a little bit of a break in the clouds for the sun to come through. Again, we're basically spotlighting our characters. It's not a bad way to think about it that way. Not bad to think about it that way, rather. We have a more lit top side of things, and that's how the separation works. Might be something in that. Figuring out the light in a scene is really integral to getting that design to work. When I'm looking at the reference, I'm glancing at kind of the shapes and the rhythms overall rather than details at this stage. I'm just trying to figure out, where light and dark are living. I want the sunlight to I want a pop of sunlight where our figures are going to be doing their action, but I don't want it to feel like a warm, sunny day. I want it to feel kind of like brisk and cool, which means I'm trying to lean away from really warm colors. I'll almost be trying to put a bit more of the warmth into the shadowed areas rather than into the lit areas. We'll see that play out. The sun, the way I'm seeing this is the sun is like above and just slightly on the inside of the camera or inside the picture frame. But it's more above like a noon thing, but it's just so overcast that it's diffused like crazy. This is not featured. I'm gonna let this go. Let's start. Do you have any tips for getting freelance work? It depends on the kind of work that you're after. What are you thinking? More illustrations or getting into games? How's your portfolio? Do you have a portfolio online? One of the first things I usually tell students when they're asking questions along those lines is, in terms of your kind of the level of quality of your work, where are you falling on that spectrum of the professionals that are already working? And the thing to remember, and don't let it be a depressing thought, but you do need to keep it in mind, is the field that you want to get into, all of the artists that are already there that you like, they're your peers slash competition. So you need to think about where you fit in that, and then try to shore up if you have any faults or anything where you're feeling like you're a little bit weaker. Shore up those weaknesses. Focus on those. If you're feeling like it's solid, then then it's time to start just getting out there, finding networking opportunities. You can just do straight up cold emails. That's always an option. It does work, especially if your work is kicking. I think we're gonna do a loop. It's meant to kind of spiral a little bit in the out exterior of the prayer labyrinth, so we're gonna lean on that. Have this interior, this wall here on the right could come in. I don't want it to ellipse. I want it to spiral. Where do you find the emails? So if we're talking your very first jobs, there's a site called LinkedIn, and you can do professional kind of query emails on LinkedIn. You just link up to the people that are, art directors or hiring directors at the different studios you would want to work with. There's also like each of the companies have, most of them will have a jobs portal. That's how I got Wizards, for instance, is they have, I think it was like wizards.com/jobs back then. But yeah, that's how I got the Wizards job. I applied through their jobs portal. So it's in terms of getting the initial contact, it's not as kind of opaque as you think. Everybody that you'd potentially be working with are people too, right? And everybody that has a job doing what you want to be doing has been through what you're going through right now. So there's certainly a level of understanding, and you got to be aware of that. You got to be respectful of their time. I can tell you what not to do. I have absolutely just ignored emails where someone was demanding or rude or didn't acknowledge the fact that I'm busy. They can be inundated with inquiries. This is what I'm saying. Like if your work is at a level that will demand attention, then you can bypass a lot of the kind of call blocking, as it were. That's what things like um, hiring recruiters, things like that. That's kind of what they're for. The other thing that you can do, I was going to give you a list, is go to events. Like go to Lightbox Expo, go to any local kind of commercial art event. Even the recruiting runs that they do for schools when they're trying to get new students might be worth poking around one of those, seeing if you can get any interest from one of those people, because a lot of schools will send working professionals, especially the more trade oriented ones like Art Center. I went to I think I'd already applied. I can't remember, but there was like a recruiting drive that they'd done up in Portland. And so I went and I brought my portfolio, and all of the people that were looking at my portfolio, they were teachers, but they were also professionals that worked in the different industries. So always worth a try. You're gonna start having booths at local conventions. Cool. That will absolutely get attention. Um, I've only done booths a couple of times, and they were. I ended up getting lots of great contacts out of that. That's another thing that you got to remember is when you're networking in this manner, to not expect it to garner work right away. What you're doing is even more important. You are fostering new working relationships with peers, professionals. So you're you're not guaranteed to get a job out of a meeting that's exciting with somebody that you find on at a convention, but maybe down the line they might remember you, especially if you were really cool, entertaining, interesting. Um, you had work that they really dug. So you have to treat. I mean, it's just being a good person, but you do want to treat each of those meetings with, like you are founding a relationship. You don't necessarily need to aim to make friends with everybody, and you won't. But it's totally worth it to try to be as amicable as possible. Yeah, Overcast is always tough. Way you've explained it before is it's a lot like dating. It's just as important to have them like you. Yes. I think it's even more like dating in that you also need to be aware that you're bringing something to the table, that this isn't just you needing them, that I mean you're offering a service, and you want to come out as professional and likable as possible, because a lot of jobs they'll hire more based on what it would be like to work with you than your portfolio itself. I've absolutely hired people with this mindset where my thinking is maybe I can help them improve in these spots compared to I could hire this, savant genius, but they have, really poor social skills in regard to taking critique, or they just think they're super hot shit, and it would be obnoxious to work with them. Like, once you're working, you're going to encounter all sorts of different people, and you'll develop a taste for it. And once you get to the point where you're hiring, it'll be the same thing. After putting in the time, you'll be like, I just don't want to deal with these douchebags. That said, most people are pretty great and awesome to work with. Okay, we need to throw in another layer. I can't render too much at any point because what I want to do is get a feel. It's just a sketch after all, right? I'm going to see if I can treat the foliage a little bit differently. I'm not going to do a foliage brush per se, but I don't want to lasso out a bunch of leaves. It's going to be a nightmare. Again, I'm trying to think of shapes, even at this stage of the drawing. Trying to find visual interest, overlap, good overlap. I want to avoid tangencies, things like this, where like a corner will come onto an edge. Too much, but I always cut them away if they're over the top. So we need a new value that's going to be much darker than the rest here. The entire tree itself won't be dark per se, but the available values to us will be. Take a look at our reference again, see if there's any examples. Yeah, so dark trees back there. Very common to get the tree trunks. The majority of a tree trunk would be dark when you have an overhead light, and this goes back to our first 3 rules of light. It's the perpendicularity. The trees are pointing more towards that light source. Fill this out a little bit better. This is a little bit anemic. Okay, so those are placed, and because I just want the shapes, we're going to a little bit. We can do something stylized here. Again, I want overlap. I do not want shapes to create tangencies. I like this. I like this shape back here. I want to keep it. That's the only reason I'm cutting this out right now. I may end up having to get rid of it though, just because of its placement. Or I can get rid of the tree. There's no this was just a sketch. I don't need to follow it super hard. This might be too too tight of an area where it's really bright with too dark, so it's going to create a contrast there that would draw away from our focal point. So I think, should I just cover it now? Let's see if we can do just a touch of overlap. Keep that little shape there. All right, what do? Still quite desaturated. This is on a different layer. I can totally, yeah. See the shape that's made there? That's way too much visual interest. There's ways to work around it. There's always a way. If we can't get the color right just by picking, let's see if we can do it. And mask it. Oh, oh. So there we are. Something with a little texture, maybe. Might be too digital. What else we got? That's a little better. Might give it too much of a like a pine tree conifer feel though. The good thing about doing the selection first is, you know, your boundaries are done. The major shape is there, and you can't really mess it up by kind of popping in stuff like this, you see? I've since I'm using Ireland for some of this visual reference, I did a 2-week sort of backpacking trip with a friend of mine way back in the day, and one of the stops was in Ireland. And in Ireland's beautiful country. I really really loved Ireland. But ironically, or maybe not ironically, might not be the right word, but while I was there, I somehow managed to step in human shit twice. Never done it in my life. Go to Ireland and it happens twice. So we were only there for a fraction of that trip. Actually, I was gone longer than that. I think it might have been 2 months, but we were in Ireland and Japan for 2 weeks. First time was out. Both times were not very far from a church. That's what made me think of it, painting this church stuff. New York is littered with human shit all over the place. I mean, I've seen it in other places. Like I've seen it in New York, San Francisco for sure. San Francisco, I was there for a for SeaGraph one year, and I was there was like an overpass type area, and you could walk down this stairs down to the main road that would take you down the hills towards the convention center. And inside that stairwell, someone had dropped a log, and someone else or the originator put one of those little martini flags in it. It was like art. Oh, humanity. Dan Rob, welcome. So good. Yeah, so with the Ireland one, the first one I stepped in was in Dublin, and we were walking around. I've never seen so much vomit in my life. Uh, Everywhere I went, like after a certain hour, the pubs are packed and all of this stuff, and the backpackers are out, and you would e- every 20 feet you'd find a pile of vomit, and it was always like the same color. It was weird. Clearly, they'd like had way too much Guinness and shepherd's pie. It was gross. It was a very gross place at certain times of the day. They had you got to say something for their sanitary crew because every morning that place is clean, Dublin specifically, and beautiful. But the we had the complete polar opposite. So in Dublin, every night, public garbage can on the street, there would be a pyramid of garbage that would be outside the can, kind of down. And again, they'd clean it every day. It was amazing how much their sanitation crews got done. And then we went to Japan after that, which is like the cleanest place. Um, you wouldn't even see spit in the street in some parts of Japan. I mean, we went to a few cities. We went to some rural areas, and we went to Kyoto, and I think the most time was spent in Kyoto. But even a bigger city like that, it was so clean. Reminds you of New Orleans, the Dublin. Yeah, I would say that's pretty much on par. You shouldn't be watching this while eating downright. Sorry, I hadn't thought about that. I haven't had breakfast yet, so I'm not fussed. For me, it's just caffeine and nicotine at this stage. I don't mind with the brushstrokes, like a little bit of the of sky popping through. I think that's looking promising for this sketch. That's something I'm gonna have to remind myself throughout this entire process. This is just a sketch. All right, so we'll leave those alone for now. We have them separated. That's a totally different layer set. I'm gonna group them. Go back to, now that we have some values to work off of, we can kind of imagine. Again, I'm keeping this pretty tight as a value key because it's meant to be a little bit dreary. Let's see, we also need our spiral. I'm going to make that into another layer altogether. So the spiral, the prayer labyrinths are never, they're not really a maze that you need to like work your way through. There really is only one way to get through it and go back. It's just like it's a place for meditation while kind of meandering, thinking about God and all that good stuff. So I don't want to do a really complex pattern. I want to kind of cartoonify it a little bit if I can. So this is a good time to talk about this. I made the client aware that I'm not a background guy. I can paint backgrounds, but it is not my forte at all. And they were like, yeah, it's cool. Just come up with some cool options and we'll work it out. Because this is a green light, it doesn't matter as much, like, that I'm doing perfect backgrounds. It's more about communicating an idea. This is almost concept art in a sense. But yeah, you should definitely aim to be honest with your capabilities and your preferences in work. Otherwise, if when I was first in school, we were taught like say yes to everything, and I think at this stage I disagree with that. Not that as a young artist coming in, you should be overly picky, but you should be honest. I mean, you should be willing to do the thing, but just be honest that this might be more of a struggle, or you have a specialization here, or something like that. It's a tough road to walk, though. There's no perfect way to do this. Just my 2 cents. I would rather have someone be straightforward with me as a hiring person at the beginning and let me know that, you know, these are things that they're not really into doing, so that I wouldn't assign them those things, or so that I would know that they're maybe not the right match for the job, than to have them lie to me, bring them in, and then they're miserable and not having any fun with the different tasks that they've been given. And this is important because there's team morale, and like one person being really sour and bitter can really affect a group. It's crazy how much that's the case. Let's back to that layer I was just working on. Let's dull down. I'm going to use a different brush. Let's dull down this green just a touch. Kind of make an in-between. I do want it to be brighter than the background, but I want it to be dimmer than this next layer. See what this is doing? Just by picking this area to put light and a little bit more saturation, we're creating an area that there could be a focal point, even though there won't be a true focal point there, because again, we are staging, we are not doing a complete painting. I'm just adding texture in here. We're going to carve out from this texture with that prayer labyrinth. So you can see I'm also kind of starting to map out where the greatest amount of texture will be too, because again, we're creating the point of contrast that is going to present our focal point, even though we won't really have one, where it's going to nest. Using this brush to like quickly hint at a little bit of roughage on the ground. When I'm working on a job, and especially if it's something that I'm not huge on, I do spend a lot of time just sitting and kind of considering it, which I think is useful, but also, you know, a bit of procrastination. I am the world's worst procrastinator. Any of you procrastinate? I think since this foreground, I'm gonna let it also be the grass of up front. Nope, it's too cool and desaturated. Let's get something a touch more. That's actually pretty good. You procrastinate more than you breathe. Oh my god. I feel you. So I'm gonna let these be this cooler green, and I'm gonna pop that center bit even more. And when you're painting, traditionally, this kind of green, for me anyway, this kind of green pops up a lot. This kind of cool chalky green, and it's just a result of mixing green with colors to lighten it. But what you really want to get your greens to pop is go the linden green route, which is something that has a high intensity, and then work back from there. Something like this. Maybe even warm it up just a touch. Let's make a new layer just to test it. Make it a little bit brighter. And this gives you that more intense, like golfy green. That's it. Boy, controlling this brush for detail is tough. Who doesn't? Procrastination is deeper related to insecurities. I think so. I saw an interesting YouTube or something like that from a psychologist talking about it. I think you're correct. It does stem from insecurities, but it's like the angle that this therapist was taking was that it is the result of having a childhood or having a youth of insecurity, in that you weren't guaranteed all of the things that you need, and whatever that was. So you develop it's almost a defense mechanism. You because you prioritize necessities over anything else, you then later in life you then take your tasks and they do not become a dominant feature of your experience until it's a necessity to deal with them. So it's like because you have built this, you have experience with necessities being the only thing that really require your attention, you now make things a necessity. And I was like, yeah, I kind of get that. That makes a certain amount of sense. So we're handling this a lot like we would do it if this was acrylics, which is a very common. Acrylics and gouache are your typical old school painting methods, and that is how we're doing our first approach. So now that we've got a little bit more lighting figured out in the foreground, particularly where our focal point will be, I'm going to go ahead and start doing a little bit more with this background. Might be time to start breaking these up into different groups. I don't want really strong cast shadows. I want more almost an ambient occlusion type thing. And maybe even start thinking about introducing one of those pockets of color we were talking about. Don't want to over detail in the back. Again, we're thinking about production. This is one of those things that you start thinking about when you're working professionally, where it's not just about making the most awesome image possible. You're thinking about, okay, who has to pick this up after me? How much money is actually available to do this thing? These are all elements that you need to start considering. You should have different styles available depending on budget. You don't want to be in a position where you are an excellent artist and your work, and we're talking specifically about doing commercial art like concept art, keyframes, things like that. You don't want to be in a position where your only approach is gallery level quality, because in the end that's going to hurt you. It's going to be great for the client, but you're going to be spending so much time that when you do the math, when you break down how much you're being paid versus the hours put in, you're losing money. So you got to kind of remember that, in a sense, you're still running a business. In a sense, literally, you are still running a business. Get your shit together. Goddamn. The other thing that's kind of interesting about that I've found, I don't know if it's the same for all of you, but sometimes when you're not as precious and you're not cutting, or you're not like putting every second into that thing, and you are cutting corners just a touch, sometimes you can come up with some interesting solutions that, or there's like a vibrancy, a life to it that you didn't expect by not being too precious and kind of like thing. Need fast style too for certain jobs? Absolutely. You also have to remember, for a lot of us, how our work ends up functioning is we're freelancing on a lot of different projects at the same time. So you can't over focus, or ideally you wouldn't over focus. You find ways to cut corners, for example. Anybody getting dizzy yet from me rotating the canvas like crazy? When you're doing these painterly details, you gotta remember scale. You don't want to hint at like a brick or something that would be out of scale for that area. Alright, so we got that done. I'll grab this. Why not? Who's gonna stop me? This building totally feels like it's just curving on the one in front. Maybe I'm projecting. Ooh. You're looking now, like clouds back here. If it was, oh, that's right, because I have a tree that I need to do back there. So let's do that tree real quick while I'm thinking about it. So with this tree, I'm comparing it to the shapes around it. Don't want tangencies, rhythms. Say this is probably a group of trees. If it's a midday scenario, wouldn't the buildings have south-facing windows towards the sun in a colder climate? Yeah. Perfectly logical thought process. works. We'll figure out rendering for the trees. Building. I hate that. So, in the drawing, it was a quick sketch. We need to make sure that any details we're adding here are to scale. So this as a window might be too big. Maybe not even a window, just like a surface detail. And the artist that did these and some of the other character designs works with kind of a shorthand, an animation shorthand, where it's about getting the shapes down using kind of a loose vocabulary for a thing, but then you lose some of that historical stuff too, like things that we can hint at. You know, for instance, I don't think this is the same island, but I like the buildings. We're going to use these types of windows actually, more cathedral style arching. Do that. I'm just looking for little hints of details that I can pop, get a little bit of shadows, implied a little bit of perspective without doing a ton of rendering. Turn off the drawing real quick. Go. Shouldn't be adding these details yet because I haven't done any wall texture, so we'll just leave it there as notes for now. My perspective's not lining up here. Actually, original drawing, yeah. Like how the far background looks done with just a gradient. Yeah. Crazy, right? We'll go back. Have it. Mind, I'm going to use a brush that's got a textured edge. That's just to soften up that incredibly sharp lasso line. Put on both sides. Something like this, like even when I'm doing figures, even though I'm doing figures, having a liner for animation style that has a little bit of tooth like this feels almost like a, you know, pencil on paper. I love that. So all of the characters that I've done for this have that kind of toothy quality to the line. Now, that said, so this is one of those things where you're thinking about the job versus your output. I like that visually, but will that necessarily be useful for an animator? Not so much, because if you think about it, for an animator, if they have a character that's sitting still and they're just blinking, right, and the outer line is fuzzy, what's going to happen? The outer line is going to vibrate the whole time, and if that's not part of the style of that animator's goal, then you know, I've failed in the design. So it's because this is a green light, I'm treating it a little bit softer than that, in that I know that even that should this project get greenlit, there's no way anything I'm doing will ever be seen ever. That's actually one of the rough parts about doing a lot of greenlight art, which I do for movies, animations, TV series, things like that. I've done a lot of stuff like that, and I can't put it in my portfolio, and no one's ever going to see it. It's part of the game. Mm. All right. So I'm trying really hard to not over detail. I feel like I may have already done too much detail with this background stuff, but we're just laying a baseline. I'm not going to be the only artist that would be working on it. Did it get greenlit? So maybe we should focus on sales here rather than just production, countering my own thought process on the fly. Let's grab this whole bit. And I did not realize how much of that. Kind of selection. There we go. Copy all, paste. Now it'll work. Yeah. Correct. I want this to feel not necessarily like thatch, but certainly more kind of rustic. Save this strong cool here. For this one. This kind of little break in the surface, I'm going to acknowledge it in the light. Give it a little bit of wear. The beams have sunk just a touch. Let's see if we can get away with a bit cheating here. So why am I using the same brush that I used on the buildings for these? This is that stylistic thing I was talking about, where I'm trying to experiment with different ways of rendering that will give the look of the show something unique. So maybe the trees are treated flat. You know, like some animations I'm sure you've seen, if they have a character with a checkered shirt, instead of animating the stripes and the patterns so that they all move in correct perspective, they'll just leave it flat and graphic. That kind of thing. Like a smeary, painterly tree. Might be something we could work with. Get some more parallel darks here on the background. What are you? Why do you exist? Yeah, if there's a highlight pop, we can pull. Okay. Touch. Why not? Like that vertical streakiness. That's fun. Try and do the same thing. Some of our brush. Yeah, I think there's something to that. cut it out when it's behind the building. Let's go ahead and grab bright. This is what we call micro composition. We've discussed it in some of the Gumroad lessons, where you're thinking about little shapes. So we've got the composition that is this whole image, but we also have this composition of these shapes. How do they get along, right? Adding a highlight just to make that bit of roof pop out over the trees. Go ahead and add in that island. Cool thing about this being on another layer is we can totally move it around, find a good spot for it, shrink it if you want. Oops, got little kooky dukes there. Go ahead and do a fill. Forgot that I had locked the transparency. We just break this surface. Lock it again. Have that background color and see if we can find a nice in between. We want this detail here, but we don't want it to take away from the greater composition again. A little bit of Nessie back there, right? Soften the ends of the island. Do the same thing to the bottom like we did with the back hillscape. Knock it back, I think, just a touch more. Use a less textured brush for this. I want an even more atmosphere so that we're not getting something that's detracting too much from the building. There you go. Got an island in there. Great. All right. And moving back to front. Back to our church. Just hinting at detail. So now we can jump forward more. I think we can do the overlap of the bushes in front of these. Irathi, welcome. All is good here. We're just doing some little freelance work. Doing less active talking today, unless there's like actual conversation going on, because this is a paid gig, so I don't want to spend the whole show blabbing at you, unless you got specific questions or you want to chat about anything in particular that I can kind of do while working on this bad boy. I hate that. I hate everything I just did there. Are there any monsters in this project? Yes. I did not get to design those yet, though. I may still, but we'll see. I'm pretty sure I'm getting this detail wrong. That this is from a different type of church, but we're just hinting at details. Doing your own art stuff, so for the most part, just listening and chilling. Cool. Yeah, exactly. It always helps. I always liked that when I was in school, working alongside everybody else. Ugh. Boy, my shoulders getting so old, guys. If you remember, I told this story of how my sail came out when I was underway, sailing on a boat in big winds and big seas, for me anyway, and I got both of my shoulders pulled out of socket multiple times that day, and I'm still paying for it. It's been 5 years, maybe longer. One of those persistent forever injuries that's gonna be with me till my deathbed. Pretty sure. Yeah, it hurts. Yeah. Collect. Whoops. Gotta be on first. Or merging. Right. So let's do the same thing. Let's see if we can just grab some of these, reuse them in places, because lazy. The green works here. Put out a little chunk there. Trying to find ways to do like simplified shapes, doing all these little diglet hedges. I want that bit in front. Am I following any sailing channels on YouTube? Not anymore. When I first started sailing, I followed a ton. But there's kind of a, I don't know, there's a BS quality to a lot of them. Um, they turned it into reality TV, in a sense. You kind of get the feeling that it's mostly just like a brag up, and everybody's tried to turn. I mean, even I did that. My Patreon originally was the same thing, but I was trying to offer something different than like, look at me in paradise. I was trying to teach lessons and do the look at me in paradise thing. But it to me it just has that feel, and I'm not big on it. And I started to really realize it when I was on the boat, and every sailor that I interacted with, especially the younger ones, was trying to do that stuff. Not my jam. When I was watching, so there was a uh, they're already pretty big, so a name drop isn't really going to help them at all. But they originally started out on an RV and were just kind of traveling around and talking about like living out of the RV and working. I think they were both designers or something too. I think it was called Gone with the Winds. And then I think they ended up getting a catamaran, which is a very expensive type of boat, which tells you everything. But I'd already stopped watching them on their when they were doing the RV thing because I was getting the feeling that everything was monetization. Ended up mostly watching, and still, if there's any boat stuff that I watch on YouTube, it's repairs and like how tos, things like that. Always good. We're just roughing up this edge touch. Yeah, I watched some Delos and Vagabond. Yeah, back when they were first getting started, and then they started getting the the quad drones, and every thumbnail was a chick in a bikini, and I started to lose interest. Like a lot of these people, they're actually doing it. They're living the life, but at the same time, it's just this kind of false Instagram thing feeling that I get from it that just rubs me the wrong way. All for clicks. Yes, the early stuff was more raw, and that was the stuff that I liked. Probably too much. If I bring out the eaves that much, two options. I bring out the eve a little bit more. They'll do a mix of both. Bring out that eve and then shorten the other one a touch. There's a temptation. I introduced this dark in order to create an overlap between this eve and the trees behind. But there's a temptation to then use that dark everywhere, in this level of depth. I don't want to do that. All I want to do is create that separation there. So I'm going to leave the rest alone, even though that bit is darker. all got way too sharp. See that it's done. It's killed the softer, diffuse light of an overcast day. I've just overdone the cast shadows, made them too. Okay, let's leave the buildings alone. Let's get back to the hedges like I was originally doing there. Yeah, a little bit of that in front of this. Vestibule? I don't know. See what I was saying about how by mixing these greens and then trying to just lighten them on their own, you end up with that chalkiness. Got to bring back the yellow, unless, which is the case here, you are trying to keep this pushed back just a touch. I just want to create a change in a shift in plane. So if you have a planar shift, it's a new color, a new value, always. I'm going to ease up this kind of atmospheric color, that cool background color that I was letting bleed through. Drop that down a touch. Okay, let's jump back to the foreground momentarily in order to throw in that prayer labyrinth I was talking about earlier. Two ways we can do this. We'll try one first. Let's take a look at the draw it out flat version of that light. This one. Have to do a little bit of transformation because part of what makes these look so unique is the spacing in between is so even. Make an effort to keep that. I don't want to do a really complex one. Again, I'm aiming for more rustic, so I'm not doing it perfect. Like, it can be all sorts of shapes. Hard to deal with this brush. We have a rough one. What can we do to improve it? I think I like the bigger circle in the center. Grab everything. This is going to be squeezed really hard in foreshortened perspective. Not terribly fast. Good enough. Ellipse, but in perspective. Great. This sync. That means expand the depth of. Over the top of that, I want a little hillock. This is where we can probably go a little bit more ham with the light. Do you want to? Hide that. got deleted. Ah, I had a selection still on. Because I hit it. Every time. Considering the proximity of this detail and the stone I'll probably do as well, I'm going to try to get this to be a little bit more textural. Adjust it. Find this green back here a little bit more. I don't want to use that too much. I just want to hint at it. I really don't want it to feel overly digital. He said right as he used the smudge brush. Just for here. Layer. Over the next level. Yeah. Classic. A little bit more unifying. The way the previous artist drew these churches on the hills kind of has it feeling like it's sliding off the hill, but disinclined to alter her work too much because the showrunner liked it. So maybe I'll leave it a little bit wonky. All right. Whew. That's a couple hours and a half in. Ugh, a little stretchy time. I have to re-up my coffee pretty soon here. I find it's good to like step away from it a little bit, look at it, consider. There's, oops, what are we doing here? Should be Control Y. Why is that not working? Oh, there we go. I didn't have it selected. Tracks didn't stop streaming or something. Okay. So yeah, this is something that I'll do a lot. I'll back off of it for a sec, consider things, look at it in black and white, because black and white will tell you where your contrasts are broken, your value key is broken. So far it looks like the value key is looking pretty good, but I can tell just by looking at it, you know, a little bit of a distance, shrunken thumbnail like this. You see where the water should be. The water and the everything behind it is too much of the same value. We have the slope of the church and all of that stuff, but it is not standing out. So the background behind needs to get a little bit brighter. Let's look at our reference also. But yeah, there's lighter lights, stronger contrasts in that. Look at the other one. Yeah. So I'm close. I'm really close. But I need stronger top lights on all my rocks, the ground, and that water and sky need to go a little bit brighter. I'm gonna do, and that'll be really easy. That's like just a soft airbrush. But now that we see it in the photos, it really helps kind of outline what needs to be done there. Man, I am tired. Was up late playing video games, as per usual. Uh, Modern Warfare dropped a new mode, the DMZ, which is like Tarkov. If any of you have played that, Escape from Tarkov. Holy crap, that's an intense game. But they've done like a Coke Light version of it, which is very approachable and way less sweaty. Very fun. I'm playing that. Adjust my jacket. Get a little draft in the back end. Another thing I'm noticing, even though it was in the original drawing, I need to do something with that church. It feels too sausage rolly, too uniform. The lighting, I don't think the light works on it. I need to change that lighting. It's wrong. Look at our reference again. So one of the things I've gotten wrong is, and I'm looking at it really small. I mean, that's literally thumbnail size for me right now. It's probably the same for you if you've got a bigger screen, but it's the top. The roof structures, like all of the values are more uniform and the roof structures are lighter. And this, I should have done this from the beginning. I knew that that's how it's supposed to be. With an overcast day, you're going to have a lot of sky fill and very little cast shadow. Just a soft, really, really soft cast and mostly ambient occlusion. And I actually lit it and I didn't light it well. So everything else looks better. That looks like shaved ass. Okay. We've got some notes. Art director's not happy. Go back and fix it. Producing a new layer underneath. I'm gonna grab that sky color. I'm gonna cool it or up the saturation just a hair. Let's use a softer soft brush. That might be too much texture. Shame I got rid of all of my soft airbrushy brushes. Yep, that helps a lot right there. That's good. Okay, so that's one thing solved. Let's take the background, everything behind those trees. We're going to add a new layer, set it to levels, and we're going to brighten it a touch. Yeah, that helps a bit. Good start. And what that does, now that I've got a little bit more contrast in that background, that means that I can push back the buildings a little bit more. Means I don't have to do as much work with the cleanup. Go back to our buildings layer. Let's make a new layer. We'll set it to screen. And for this, we got to go really dark. A bit more saturated. What I'm going to do first, paint it on, and then I'm going to erase it out. What is happening? It's crazy. That's my glaze. Let's The texture is just a little too much. Edit it if it's green. Back. Let's erase this off of the building. Okay, go back to our screen. Also kind of bring out our shadows a little bit. Now we can erase. Find that the erasing give us value and color shift. So remembering I don't want to have the contrast between the front side of the building and the back that strong. Leaving a little bit if I can. Nope, still too much. This is the wrong brush for this. A little bit more digital. Where I can more subtly control my pressure sensitivities. Might be that I need to make the front side even as dark as these. That's a possibility too. We can try that. Go back to a multiply layer this time. Need to select a very light color. The reason I'm doing a multiply layer instead of a solid layer that's opaque on top is I have all of this textural information already on the walls and I don't want to lose it. As again, ease. Our magic word every day in this playhouse. Yeah, that's a little bit closer to what our references. Yeah, now we have much more kind of a top lighting scenario. I have one issue here. The cross feels like it's breaking scale to me. It was in the original drawing, but I think that's contributing to a little bit of our troubles. First, I think it's on the buildings layer. Yes. Fill the rendering there. This bad boy. Yeah, that feels much better to me. Also get just a touch of perspective going in there. Back, undo. Okay, try to do this right. There we go. Yeah, that. I think actually the cross was contributing to the kind of the wonky feel. I mean, the building's still wonk as hell, but I mean that's kind of the point. But the cross size, scale, all that good stuff was really not helping. Let's throw in a little. I think we saw him in some. Yeah. Throw in a little spire here. Copy this bad boy. Whoa, opportunity for micro composition. Yeah. That's the jam. I don't think we'll see it on the back of the building, but the basilica below had it in the back. We can't see it though, so let's not worry about it. Pause a minute. I think that cross may need to be the same size on the end of the building. My friend is asking me to come play Warzone or play Modern Warfare. Nope, I'm streaming. I'm working. So let's get rid of this cross. Bring back the other one. And instead, to keep the micro composition, we may adjust the trees in the background. Ah, very sneaky. A very sneaky boy. Yeah, we need to do that. Let's grab... First of all, I'm going to merge down my textures I added. I'm going to open this up. And thus I parted the red trees. I tickle me. Alright. I should absolutely be murdered. Sorry, game. Okay, let's get back to it. I think for the values on those buildings, the crosses. Our old friend, this brush. Yes. That is a place where I do want contrast. I think it'll be a nice secondary read. Yeah, the detail, like making sure that the scale of your details works can help like fake the painting pretty hard. Um, it's the candles on the cake in cake theory. Whoa, too much. What did I do? Okay, I need to see the other one while I'm doing the transformation then. Too bad. It'll work. Good enough. All right. Now we need to. I'm gonna work on the foreground trees. Oh, there's still shit to do in the background. God damn it! It's just like the crosses, like you were saying, Damage. The little details, you got to do it with the ground too. If you leave a field completely empty, um, it can kill the read. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a gradient. Top that's creating that darkness. Next layer up. Soften that digital aspect a touch. In a lot of these reference bits, the little rocks and things. So we're gonna try and do that. I'm gonna try and add. We have a lot of darks going on. Excuse me. I'm gonna try and add some of this basalt or whatever this is. That's lighter. This is tough because you can't treat it like you did the brush, which is more roundy topped. Like I said, I was doing little diglets. This we can't do. Make it chonky, angular. And what we're doing is we're just establishing a visual vocabulary. Let's actually go cool with that instead. What we're doing here is just creating more opportunities for that top lighting like we saw in our reference when we were looking at it in black and white. I'm planning to add details near the water like speculars. Yes, I'll always do like a final detail pass, but I have a feeling it's going to be less less over the top. We're just trying to ease up on the color variation. Sorry, the detailing. I was working with color variation when I. You know what? Let's just grab this and see. Like this is more the kind of detailing that I'll be doing here. Is a drawing detail, which will give us some pixels that'll tickle the brain, but not we're not aiming for what I would normally do, which is really heavy material rendering with lots of speculars and all of this the fun bits. Um, I'm always drawn to that sort of thing just as an artist, but it is not what is necessary to solve this particular task. That makes sense? Too dark. Yeah, that helps. We'll probably find some other places to throw in these stone shapes. You know, we can kind of pitch them anywhere. That kind of thing. Throw a few on the beach. Hopefully this is showing you guys that it's not all rock and roll, drugs, and parties, that the process itself, doing something, you know, that's for a real gig, can be kind of boring. You gotta try and find fun things in it. You gotta try and find ways to try and teach yourself, you know? I find this particular image and this kind of more simple rendering really boring, but I'm still trying to look at it, you know, and glean what I can out of it. That's the challenge, you know? Nice to see the whole problem solving. Yeah, that was my hope. Um, I mean, it's certainly not a viewer grabber, that's for sure. But it is what it is. This is the reality of it. Shit. I'm totally on the wrong layer. Oh, well. I hate that. Oh, Photoshop. Why? Why do you do this to me? Oh shit, I forgot to edit the stream title. I'll do that. My bad. Did that update for you? Just 3 hours in, yeah. Hey, I'm not great at this, obviously. Otherwise, I would have, you know, Naomi level followings. I have neither the looks or the charm. Okay, so I was talking about foreground, but these really rough brush textures are a little too much, and I clean them up a little. Bear with me. Apology. I know it's not as exciting. I know it. All I'm doing is just softening. Let's go ahead and grab our little silly brush texture brush, and this is a part where we can really let it kind of do what it does, because this is a shift. This is an overlap of one kind of plane of a hill over another. So it's okay to allow the edge to have a little bit of life. In fact, I think it's necessary. And you can go either way. You can go dark into light or light onto dark. We're going to need to do that here too. I need to do it everywhere, but this is kind of that edge thing I was talking about, so you can get rid of a little bit of the digital aspect. I don't want it all to be grassy texture. The other thing I can do is erase out with textured brush. I was doing earlier with the hills in the background. Just kind of, oops, break this up a touch. Just softening that edge. It's a tiny thing. It really is. But man, what a difference it can make in terms of letting the eye know what to focus on. You know? So here it's almost like a stumble texture. And I'm doing almost like a depth of field thing where I'm letting it be softer with more texture where I really don't want you looking. Like this part should be soft. I don't want attention there. Whereas here we've got little grassy bits. That's how this works. Okay, we'll do another half hour on this. And then we can finish it up tomorrow. If y'all are interested in joining. We will have one version done, and then we'll start on the next one. Probably the next one will go faster, because I think what I'm going to do with that is really cartoony. So more just straight gradients. This will be the most rendered version that I give them, because it's a lot of work, right? Back to this. Do some soft. Softening. Again, this is just about controlling where the eye looks. Something on the top that is fine. There it is. This is not even. Softening all of that. Make a whole layer on top. This is just to try and smooth out some of this streaky stuff here. You see these lines that are being created? They're fine when you're doing the sketch, but after, if they're distracting, if they're creating visual interest when you don't want it, then they're not helping you. Absolutely something to be said for just making a field of color with animation. It's a little bit tougher because this is my painterly painty brush set that we made a couple of sessions ago, and now I'm actually struggling against some of that. Trying to break up those lines. That's it. That's all we're doing right now. Okay. This is another way you can do this. I'm gonna just grab this whole bit. Turn off that. Copy, paste, copy, merged, and then I'm just gonna actually blend. This is the other way. It's an easy way to just soften those strokes. We are not attempting to mimic Sargent, so we don't need to worry too much here. Not this time. All right. Hopefully you can see what I'm trying to do here is like a little kind of torus shape, a donut around a donut of grass. I think that's smooth enough. Let's take a look at it in black and white. Good. Okay. Let's work on these trees. Get our notes down for what they should be doing. Of course. Have any images with these in, mostly just dark. Down here it's got something close to what we're working with. Dark trunk, lit foliage. Just kind of what we expected. So let's start with the trunk. Do I have a set time for the pieces in terms of like how long I should be spending on them? Oh, okay. No, I don't have a set time, but that's like that's a dangerous answer. What you should be doing for the timing with your freelance. I mean, I don't have like a due date because the showrunner can't really get started right away, so I'm doing pre-previs. The showrunner is looking at stuff but can't really get actively involved at this stage. But the proper answer that you should be using as a freelancer is it should take no more time than it absolutely has to. Meaning minimum amount of time you can get away with. Because you've got other work to do. You've got other things to do. You don't want to... You want to maximize the profit of the time that you spend doing on the thing. In the beginning, it's just like it's exciting to be working on a painting or doing something, being paid to do this thing. It's like this is crazy, but that's the outsider mindset. That's the mindset that somebody that's paying you might have, where they're just like, "Why do you want money? You're having fun. This is work. This is time that you've invested in order to have the skills to do this thing. You you are engaging in the commerce of a trade, so you need to maximize that. And if it's something like this that I'm not super in love with, even more reason to try and get it done as fast as possible and not really obsess about things. Get use your expertise to get down what is necessary and nothing more. And that's how long it takes. Rough, not so simple answer, but that's the truth. And again, like I was saying earlier, you'll be surprised when you start restricting yourself in the way I'm talking about to find that sometimes when you're going quick and you're just trying to get it done, there's a little bit of genius that just falls out of you. Because you're not overthinking, you're not trying to do the most amazing piece. You're just trying to do what's necessary to get it done, and that's often all any really good art needs. So even darker, that does. So one of the things that I need to establish here is kind of a scale, because now we're in the foreground. So I have a feeling we may see even less of these trees than we're seeing right now. Let's grab them now and see what we. The alternative is we can make them more of a sapling instead of like a thicker trunk tree. Let's try just editing the trunks. See if that. Oops. So this one here, let's apply this. Hi Odin, welcome. You found someone that uses Magic Picker? Yes, but it's a very old version of it. I'm working on CS6, so I have not had an update from Anastasia in a long time. But I love Color Picker. Or, sorry, Magic Picker. I think they make great products, but they're only focused on the most latest versions of Photoshop, which doesn't help me. They still get their ads like crazy though. lock this down. You're not a Photoshop user anymore, but you're on PS. You feel it's the best picker to use. I agree. I like the I like Magic Picker, although the tone lock has never worked for me, which is the actual reason I bought it. It's never worked right. It's something about the code is broken, and it's such an old product that they don't support it anymore. So now I use the lab color things to get some of those subtleties that you would get from the tone lock. What do you use if not Photoshop? One of the things I've been kind of really interested in trying out is heavy paint. I really like a lot of the work that comes out of there. Um, but I can't. Basically, the only time I can play with it is if I'm doing like just personal arts. So maybe I would do it for a stream, but I need to get really familiar with it before I can put it into my pipeline. Your color space enthusiast. Nice. I love it. Use Krita. I have never even heard of that. I'll have to check that out. Heavy paint is awesome. Yeah, I love how it looks. I use Procreate and Photoshop the most. The Mage. Procreate is amazing. The way they've managed to make the UI so pad and pencil friendly is amazing. The only thing that I miss, is my, the Nostromo. This guy is a speed demon. Without that, I paint, at painting speed. This thing is just. Whew. Procreate for sketching and simple animations. Manny, thanks for joining the chat. Yes, it's great for that. I love it for sketching. I have used Procreate, like when I was living on the boat, I've used it to do finished illustrations, and it does do it. But it's awesome. What is the keypad I just put up, or what is Procreate, Odin? Oh, the thingy. This is the Razer Nostromo. They don't make it anymore. Now they have a new version of it called the Tartarus, and it's like a. You can see I've worn into it, but it's like keypads. It's a gaming thing, but you can use their Razer. No, it's not a mouse. It's a mini keyboard with controller bits. Like there is a mouse wheel on it, but you can't move this around. There's this keypad here, directional keypad, space bar here, and then I think it's 20 keys, and I mean, I love it. I use it. The reason it's so great is it does. At least it was one of the first ones that did macros. So Razer's Synapse, the app that you use to control your Razer products, lets you set macros for individual keys. So a lot of these keys are macros, like Control N to make a new layer, or Control T to transform, or my undo and redo are next step, last step, so that they're unending back all the way through my history, so I can undo multiple times. Whereas if you undo traditionally with Photoshop, it'll go back and then you undo that back step back to the front. So it's undo redo with a standard Control Z. So there's that kind of stuff. Man, it saves you so much time. I love it. I am a fan. That's all good. Check them out. It just helps with the macro stuff in particular. That's the big thing. Yeah, I did a whole Gumroad on the tools, and the um, Nostromo was the main discussion point. Okay, so we're gonna allow this foreground stuff to get darker in general. Now that we have the strong darks of the trees to play against, we can really get some of these colors and values sorted. That's why we do it in the pieces that we do. You know, value group at a distance, psht, value group at a next distance, and so on. But you always need something to play it against in terms of the relationships. We're gonna change the shape of this tree because that little baby bump just... I definitely want the overlap to help sell the depth. But considering the scale of the figures, this might need to be pushed. Let's also change the... How can we do another layer? Copy of it. That one. That wall's just a little bit more worked out. Soften some of the edging that I put on top because I don't want... That's something I really don't want to see in this if we're going to go kind of a more traditional animated background look. We don't want the digital feel from repeated rhythms and hard lines. Let's merge those two. Paint on top. Gonna make the top of the wall thicker like our reference. I think we're gonna go with something more like this. I like. I'm gonna use that straight blue there. We will probably go brighter since it's the foreground. Let's make it a new layer just in case I fuck up. Yeah, we're gonna have to go brighter because those values are so close. Look at that, it's almost lost. Oops. Yeah. We want the stones to feel a little bit wet, a little moisture in the air, which means hints of reflectivity. We're gonna worry about the scale later. I'm giving myself notes, and we'll finish this up tomorrow. But this is just to kind of make sure that the things that I'm thinking about now get addressed. Hey, thanks for the follow, Iodin. What is it? Munin and Hunin. Appreciate it. Cheers. And we will see you tomorrow, hopefully. Okay. So it's not going to be that intense all the way around. This is just notes. We're going to do another note for the dark side. Let's take a look at our... I like the mossy overgrowth of this old graveyard more than this prayer circle here, so I think I might introduce some of that. Get there. bump up our warmth just a touch. The lab controller is so hard to control with the stylus. It's just a touch. Like five points can make such a difference that it looks like a rainbow. That's one of the things I really wish that tone lock worked, because it was so much easier to do something like that. You could just shift the, Oh, is it gonna work for me today? Of course it's gonna work for me today. The day I've been bitching about it. Oh, this is my life. Well, that's what the tone lock does. So it'll keep the same value, but you can change the hue, and it's amazing. That's the whole reason I bought this this app. Yeah, there we go. It's getting a little rainbowy. Drop the saturation a touch. It's because you're here. You're repping. Get it away from that and get it back to the cool. Or sorry, not the cool, the warm. We're going to let grass come up out over the top of this. Let some of that overgrowth happen. And just notes. These are notes for future Izzy, who will hopefully be less tired. The other thing that I wanted to make sure I get, I'm gonna lock this down. I'm gonna just do it now. God damn it. I know that it'll look so much better with the directional hotspot. Okay, we'll leave it at that for that. The other thing I wanted to do was flowers. I'm gonna hint at that now too. For that, we're just going to get a little chonker brush. Let's do... Will you be my flower brush? Take a look. So cool. Very pale. Just on another layer. To get the shape of these right, I think it'll read a little bit better, but we're just making notes. And let's grab this color. We want something that's much dimmer and much cooler, and it will give us that same effect, but for the background. Get little flowers to go. Okay, I think we've got everything. I think I can't help myself. Oh, damn it. Me and speculars. God, I have a problem. Alright, be enough of that. Maybe... Ah! Turn turn off the color. Okay, so yeah, we're most of the way there. I'd say we're like 70%. We'll do a little cool bounce light for the trees. We might have to do some real solutions for the foliage. I don't think we're going to get away with that brushy brushstroke crap that I've got there right now. For the foreground trees, I mean. Texture on the rocks, texture on the grass, moss. You coded the same thing for yours, but have been thinking about trashing it in favor of YUV and HCY. Yeah, that would work. I mean, aren't those kind of ultimately the same thing? It's just two color spectrums and a value, right? We're doing some color nerd stuff now. How are we doing on time? Just near enough to have a breath. Oh, so Peanut Gallery. Any thoughts? What do you think? Is there anything kind of jumping out at you that doesn't work, or? Flip it back. I feel like going with the realistic colors was a good choice, and I think I'm going to do that with a simplified version of this when we start on that, when it's more like cartoony. I'll keep the color space that's there, that overcast Irish island realism. Yeah. I'm gonna need to tone down the yellow of the prayer path, I think. Maybe not. I don't know. It is very desaturated. Maybe I could warm it up and dim it down a touch. Remember, and oh, that's the other thing. I was gonna do a patch of sunlight that's breaking through the clouds. That's gonna land right where our characters should be standing. They're going to be kind of in the center of this prayer circle with some characters in overlap. But I think we've got some really good staging here initially set up, because we're going to have... let's just go ahead and throw in a tester set of figures. We're going to have... figure here. It's going to be breaking over that. Figure here, figure here. Our main action in the foreground. Figure. That's going to frame really nice. So if I do that spotlight right on the main two figures and kind of get a little bit of light in that second hillock, the Taurus I was talking about, around the stone circle, I think we're going to have a solid finish. You made it more saturated, you'd only make the green more saturated. In general, for the grass, or for the part where it's going to be lit by the sun? Sheens asks, how much attention is the church supposed to have? The church is a secondary, tertiary read. We need to know that we are in a church prayer labyrinth, but beyond that, the church itself isn't hugely important yet. I think it will be in another sequence. The church is pretty boring, I think, but I'm going with the design that was originally sketched as is. A part of that, I mean, this sounds like excuses, which it kind of is, but part of that is this is keyframe art for a greenlight. We're not doing final design here, so we'll probably have a better design if we get greenlit. Potentially push the church back further and flatten the shadows, and pop out the roof. A bit more with speculars. I like that. Those are good notes. General to look supernatural, it would only be affected by light if you do a pin light over the surface. Oh yeah. Yes, the sky is very overcast. I don't want to do like a full God Ray pin light type thing. I just want to do kind of a warmer spot. Throw this in here. For future Izzy. I think I will do that. I'm going to push the church back. If not, actually physically make it smaller, I'm going to push it back with a little bit more atmosphere, because what that'll do is those figures that I just drew in will have even more overlap in these figures in the mid ground ahead of it. I think that's a good idea. Sweet. All right. I think that should do it for today. We will wrap this one up tomorrow and probably start the second version. I'm hoping to have 2 or 3 variants available for the client probably by Monday. So I'll be hacking away at it this weekend. Whoops. Thank you all very much for joining me on this fun little journey, and hopefully it was a little bit illuminating seeing actual freelance concept work in process and in progress. I hope that you can see that it's a struggle. It's not always fun. It's not always rock and roll. It is what it is. But you try and find the fun in it. I'm hoping that you see that, like, you know, as much as I bitch, that I'm trying to find the challenges and the fun things that are appealing to me that will help me keep going on it, because it's so easy to get kind of like burnt out on something because you're just not loving it. And frankly, that's going to be a good chunk of your freelance work. When you're working, you're not going to be loving most of what you're doing. You're going to love some of it, and that's going to be the stuff, the juicy chocolate bits that keep you going back for more and more. But I guarantee you, you're going to run into a lot of projects that are just not your jam, and you got to get them done. So this is the way. You've got to plow through. You got to find the fun, and then also find ways to challenge yourself so that you can say, "Oh, I learned this from that piece." And we're already hitting a couple of things that we learned, like making sure that our details to scale work. We're learning about making sure that we're obeying the lighting that we outlined from the beginning. There's all sorts of stuff. So there you go. All right. Thank you, machines. Mage, sounds good. See you tomorrow. Yes, we will see you there. You learned stuff today, especially about size of detail related to scale. Yes, if you're interested, we can talk about cake theory a little bit more tomorrow. You love very little of what you do for clients. Same boat. Same boat. It's very rare that I'll actually do something that's paid that is like totally what I love to do. But I have learned what we're talking about right now is something that I've taught myself over time. Just like find the things you love, and then you can enjoy it. All right, gang. We will catch you tomorrow. I'm not sure exactly at the time. I'll post it on the Discord if you want to be updated just before streams go up. Check out and join on the Discord. That's listed in the About section below. And we'll see you then. Until then, paint smart, paint sexy.